All right, here we are with another five sheet today. This one from the New York Post. Remember, five sheet is an objective tool you can use to analyze any news article, cut through any of the misleading information, any of the fakery they try to throw at you. It's filled out according to your own knowledge, your own biases. So it's going to come out a little different for each person. And what I'm doing today is a little example showing how I filled out this one particular article according to my own knowledge and my own biases. So let's get started here with the headline as they write it. A Harvard professor says an alien visited in 2017 and more are coming. So, what is that? I said that was a fact. That's pretty straight down the middle. Not much room for editorialization there. How did I paraphrase it? There is a professor from Harvard who says aliens visited in 2017 and more are coming. Alright, what's the bias of this New York Post? It's a right leaning outlet, no doubt. And I noted that it was a tabloid too, with this alien based story, this sensationalist. Not this is a type of story not a lot of the more mainstream establishment outlets would cover. Um, so that's why I thought that was relevant here. Alright, let's jump down to the thesis. Didn't come right at the very beginning, it's in this third paragraph. In his upcoming book, Boop Boop Boop, that professor lays out a compelling case for why an object that recently wandered into our solar system was not just another rock, but actually a piece of alien technology. So I've put that was not exactly a fact or opinion. It's mostly fact, but the fact that they described it as a compelling case puts this in a gray area. That's a little bit of editorialization right there. So I put that one as other. You could call that one how you will, but that was kind of middle of the road. The way I paraphrased it, the professor makes a compelling case that an object that entered our solar system is alien technology. Alright, what did they have to support that thesis? So there were some quotes throughout from the professor's book that did seem to establish that he made the case, that he made the claim that it was alien technology. Now, was it a compelling case? That's a very subjective determination. For the most part, they just let the arguments speak for themselves. They didn't have some other experts come on and say, we've looked at this, it's very compelling. There wasn't that type of evidence. But they did have this one line which kind of seems to cut the other way. Whatever the truth, the stakes are high. So they didn't even, later in the article, they didn't seem as committed to the fact that it was a compelling case. They're sort of, shrugging at this point. Whatever it is, either way, it's a big deal. Whether or not it is a compelling case. Well, I guess this could be whether or not it is true, despite the fact that it's compelling. But that does feel like they're backing off a little bit. Alright, what's the outline of the article? How did they structure this? They started out with this claim. Let's just read this first paragraph. This is kind of important. Because remember, this is not an opinion article or anything. This is just straight news. So let's see the very first words in this article. When the first sign of intelligent life visits us from space, it won't be a giant saucer hovering over New York. More likely, it will be an alien civilization's trash. So that's just stated as a fact. But I mean, that's one of the main premises of this professor's book. So I think that right there gives us sort of a little taste of the tonality we're going to see throughout this. I have a longer note on this at the bottom, but it's a little suspicious that they're just stating as fact one of the axioms that the professor is basing his argument on. Alright, so that's the first one. And then they introduce this professor. Then they have the thesis. Next up, they give us a little background on that object. The object itself is not controversial. This was spotted. Astronomers talked about it in 2017. And then they talk about. So wait, this is still number 4. And now we get into the professor's take on it. What would happen if a caveman saw a cell phone? So now he's opening his mind to another possibility. And so he's getting into his explanations about how the way all the other astronomers explained it were not it. It was some other thing. And they start wondering about why it accelerated away from the sun at a certain speed. That's what broke the camel's back. Was the way it moved right here. How it's supposed to like speed up as it goes towards the sun and then slow down as it goes away from the sun. Or kick out or whatever. It's supposed to go at certain speeds, and then this object did not go at those speeds. So that was a big question. And it did not follow that trajectory. So his theory is that it has this space. Oh, wait, sorry. Before we get into his theory, the standard definition, the standard explanation for this would be that it's some like a comet where you have some frozen gases that get burned off when you get close to the sun, and that propels it kind of like a rocket and pushes it away from the sun. So that explains the acceleration. And then, but he doesn't buy that theory. And he thinks it's something more like these light sails. So we get into him. And he does happen to be involved in a light sail project, which is maybe some kind of conflict of interest. Who knows? Maybe he's trying to, increase market awareness of that type of technology. So then, yeah, this is his explanation. And yeah, his explanation of the space sail, and then we get into the reactions to it. How the international team said they find no compelling evidence to it, and how he admits that this raised astronomers' eyebrows, but we don't really have a good explanation of what the mainstream establishment has said about this. A little bit of an explanation, talk about the frozen hydrogen, a little bit of back and forth between this professor and what the establishment says, but not that much. And then we get past the reactions and into just the implications. Past this, whatever the truth, the stakes are high. Because if we accept that they made contact, then that would change everything. And that's what these last few paragraphs are. It would put us in perspective. We'd have to think about climate change or war, etc. Boop, boop, boop. That's how they finish us up. Alright, let's get into the named manipulation tactics here. The only one I spotted in this particular article was strawman feigning ignorance, because it really feels like we're only seeing half the story here. Feels like we're seeing this professor's side of the story. They do provide this one counterexample where some scientists have suggested that the acceleration was caused by frozen hydrogen driving it like a comet, and that hydrogen would have been invisible to Earth's infrared cameras. And then they have Loeb, the professor, and a colleague who published a paper that disputed that. And that's the only real counter argument they include. But there must be other counter arguments. I mean, they said this whole international team has come out and said there's no compelling evidence about this. The whole scientific community has been looking at this, or, the whole astronomical community, that whole subset of the scientific community, has been looking at this closely since 2017. And you think there's no other counter arguments against what this professor is saying. Everyone is just standing there completely puzzled. Maybe it's this frozen hydrogen thing, but what that professor says, well, there's a good chance it is that alien sail thing. I sincerely doubt that's the case. I really expect if you dug into this, there would be a bunch of professors putting out different arguments as to what it could be that's not an alien explanation. And those were simply not included in this article. And one of the reasons that's easier to believe is tied into this final note here, where the tonality of this article gives us reason to believe that the writers are being sympathetic to the professor's position. Like that very first paragraph we looked at just states as fact this position that is, one of the novel premises of the professor's book. The fact that our first alien encounter will involve alien trash rather than actually meeting a Martian or something. That's kind of like a new thought that most people don't think about. That's one of the big selling points of this guy's book. And they're just stating it as a fact in this first paragraph. So that right there is a sign that this is a very sympathetic article. They plug the book lavishly, very early on there, blah, blah, blah. The full title, they talk about the publisher, say what date it's being published. Later on, they have the actual picture of the thing here. So this might even be something where the publishers paid them to write this article, because it feels like a very sympathetic article. And you see other examples of that throughout. And that sympathetic tone makes this straw man feel all the more probable that they're leaving out some compelling arguments on the other side. And there's likely some other behind the scenes bias that we're not quite seeing. Quote selection and so on. Alright, well, I suppose I'm done with this one. Let me know if you think I missed anything with this. I know it's a little different than the beat I usually cover, but I thought this was an interesting story. With all the alien coverage coming out this year, this is a hot topic. So we'll see how this one develops. Really, my takeaway is this is just a professor trying to sell a book. I think if there was really something compelling from a scientific standpoint, we would have seen more from the scientific community. There would have been more papers being published on this, and you would have seen news articles about those papers. You wouldn't be hearing about this as part of his book tour. That wouldn't be the first place we're hearing about this theory. But then again, anything is possible. So feel free to leave a comment below if you think I missed something, or if you'd like to suggest another article for me to run a 5-sheet on. And again, feel free to run your own 5-sheet on this if you think I missed anything. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time.